We are indeed living in interesting times. The rhetoric on this world stage between China and US is getting heated up higher and higher. There's several ways I look at the situation, and today I want to share that with you. So, has the world changed very much from the early days of human civilization? I really don't think so, right? Um, if you look at the situation today, it's very much like any ancient world where we have established power and we have challengers. Today, the decade ago, the challenger was Russia, and the U.S. put sanction on them because they was an energy challenger to the U.S. dominance. And today, China presents a much bigger challenge than Russia ever did, because China has now challenged U.S. on multiple fronts: economy, currency, military, geopolitical influence, way more so than Russia ever did. So today you start seeing this grouping, right? So if you look at the feudal world, you have a king and you have the lords, and under the lords you have the vassal, the fiefs, the serfs, and so forth. Well, today U.S. is the king, right? And the Europeans are sort of the vassals, the lords, and they are now called upon a time of trouble to come and support the king and defend the realm, or to defeat the challenger. You have all these other countries like Latin America, Asian countries, and African countries, and even Middle Eastern countries that are kind of the sort of like the serfs, the fiefs. They don't really care. Ultimately, they don't really care who runs the world, as long as they can live their days. They're nowhere in the position to challenge anyone, and they don't want to get involved. But they're getting dragged into this because two sides are vying for influence, right? Of course, the Chinese want resources, they want influence to build their economy, and the Americans like you don't work with Chinese, you're my serf, you're my slave. You don't go work for Chinese. You don't want to work with Chinese, take their money or accept their roads or bridges. You work for me. So in a way, you can see the world that way, right? Looks kind of like it feels kind of like the medieval world, and then you can also look at it in a different way. So a lot of people in the U.S. hate Henry Kissinger. They think that Henry Kissinger is a Jewish devil, but actually Henry Kissinger, in one brilliant stroke, helped defeat the Soviet Union. And just give you a little background. What happened was that back in the 60s, the early days of Soviet Union and China, they were buddies, right? Because that was the heydays of idealism, global communism, where the oppressed people work together and create their own destiny. It was a very idealistic view of world, very much similar to the 60s flower child movement in the United States. It was just an idealistic period right after World War II. But very quickly, the Soviet Union learned the same thing that the U.S. learned today, which is China don't like to take orders from anyone. So, unlike other Soviet Union satellites, China refused to be a satellite, right? They refused to take order from the Soviet Union. So slowly that relationship frayed. It got colder, and eventually became confrontational, with literally China and Soviet Union on the verge of war. And U.S. saw this opportunity because U.S. was in the midst of fighting Soviet Union influence as well, and they needed a very strong ally, a very strong ally. You can have small countries like Germany as an ally, but when you have China, that's a different game, right? And in one brilliant stroke, Henry Kissinger was able to help China reconnect with the United States. And what that led to was instantaneous two-front war for Soviet Union. They have Americans and their allies, Western Europe, in the West, and now they have a potential enemy in the East, as in China. So that accelerated the decline of Soviet Union. That tells accelerates the decline of the Soviet Union by a long shot. Sure, the Soviet Union's economy is crumbling. I mean, it's not crumbling, but non-productive. Um, the bureaucracy was stifling all this stuff. But they could have, you know, stumbled along for another half a century. It was this combined force of China and U.S. pressing on the Soviet Union that accelerated its eventual collapse. It will collapse anyway, but they just, it's China-U.S. alliance just helped speed it up. So what happening today is the U.S. learned the same thing that the Soviet Union did, in the sense that China don't like to take orders from Americans either. China don't like to take orders from anyone. So, America was saying, well, you guys are not following rules. Well, yes, but you always have to remember who made these rules. All these international rules were made by Europeans and Americans in the last century, right? And of course, China don't want to follow the rules because that rule does not benefit China. These rules benefit the European and American, for the most part, Americans, but to a lesser extent, the European power. So of course, it's in China's interest, self-interest, to upend the rules and do what it needs to do to rise. And for the most part, it's very clever up to this point to stay within the rule yet bend it enough for self-interest, yet not anger other people so much. And what you see today is that China and Soviet Union are now, again, iron buddies. And what do you find America in the position of? A two-front war. If America shifts all its military focus to the east, what Obama would call the pivot to Asia, well, that just leaves Europe wide open, right? That leaves the European wide open, and the Europeans are still scared dead of Russians' influence. Less so today, but Americans always in their ears are, hey, the Russians. And so it's not possible for U.S. to pivot 100% to Asia, all the resources. If it did, of course, it would be very dominant here, but it couldn't be dominant. The same thing with Europe. U.S. is caught in a hard place. If it invests too much resource in Europe, it cannot really focus on the rapid emergence of China, which really at this point, U.S. has to put 100% of its resource. If it ever want to put a real stoppage to China's rise, it has to put 100% because China is there already. China is there. So I really don't know at this point how U.S. in the long run can win this. Because it itself is struggling. Yes, it is fighting a two-front war just like Soviet Union did, and its economy is not competitive as it used to be. Because there's so many more new competitors, from Europeans to Asian countries, that are nipping at the heels of U.S. industries. So, what does U.S. have in its tank to be able to fight a two-front war for an extended period of time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, to put down all these rising power? And it's not just China, it's Russia, it's Turkey, and it's Iran, and eventually it will be also India and Brazil. It's just that India and Brazil right now can't get their bleep together, so they can't join these new blocks of challengers. But the challengers are there, and they're very clear, and they're also aligning themselves to challenge America's hegemony. So that's where we are today in the world. This is a clear, simple analysis. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.